special privilege to introduce our speaker and performer tonight, Dr. Trevor Stephenson, who is founder and director of the Madison Bach Musicians. And I'm going to put in a plug for you, Trevor. The Madison Bach Musicians are right now celebrating their 10th anniversary in Madison. And they're going to be doing a Baroque holiday concert in December. And next April we'll be doing again, is it 2 years since the first one?
No, like 4.
4? Oh, time goes fast when you get old. Are going to be doing the wonderful grand Mass in B minor by Bach in April. This is Trevor's 4th appearance for the Winchester Academy. He's going to tell you about his beautiful instrument here and about the CDs that he has out there. Incidentally, he will be happy to sign your CDs if you would like him to after the program. And since he is such an engaging speaker and raconteur and educator and musician, I'm just going to leave the rest of that to Trevor, wow. And it's all yours. Wow.
Great to see you guys, and I guess we'll have a group come in at 7, right? There were 2 times given. So anyway, good. Thank you. This is such a lovely thing. And today, my harpsichord was in my living room at noon in Madison. You know, and I wrestled it into the car on my own. It weighs about 200 pounds. I can't deadlift it, but I can't trick it into the van. You know, so anyway, with various dollies and leverages and things like that, I get it into the van. And I drive up here, and 3 or 4 very nice people meet me, and we set it up. And then I tuned it 4 times, and here we are. You know, because that's the way it goes, especially with instruments that have a very kind of a delicate stringing to them. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the harpsichord. I want to talk a lot about Bach and his life and about his music, and then also a little bit about his contemporaries, Scarlatti and Handel, who were, strangely enough, all born in 1685, which is, you know, bordering on spooky because they're not just 3 okay musicians or anything. They're 3 of the very best we've ever had in any period of history, and they all come in on the same comet of 1685. Beyond that, as Georgia was noting in the car, they're completely different from each other. What they need to tell you about life, they have different messages. So hopefully we can kind of triangulate among these 3 giants and see some wonderful vistas from their viewpoint. So a little bit about the harpsichord and, you know, how things come about. You know, it's kind of like, how do cars come about? How did computers come about? How does a musical instrument like a harpsichord come about? Like, even when, right? We actually don't know when the first harpsichord appeared, but except it's somewhere in the 14th century, like so many other strange things, right? Somewhere in the 14th century, these things start popping up in pictures, okay? These keyed string instruments. If you think about it, it's really a harp, kind of with a tuxedo on it, you know? I mean, it's a harp. If you look there, there's a harp on its back in there. But somebody had the very strange idea of putting a bunch of individual plectra in between the player and the strings. Now you can imagine if you're a harp player, and there have been harp players for thousands of years, right? Imagine in the 14th century, some kook comes up to you and says, I would love to put some keys between you and your beloved strings, right? So, and the harp player would be going, please go away, you know, no. But there was a reason for it. The reason is that you can play very fast. You can play incredibly precisely. You can trill like there's no tomorrow. You can, you know, the chords can change very, very quickly, and there's no way that the harp can keep up with it. So what I'm getting at is that even though this looks like an antique instrument, all of that, this is really the beginning of your cell phone. You know, this is a modern instrument, and no harp can keep up. No harp can keep up with this. sorry. That's about 45 seconds of what just basically the coolest music ever written. So that's Bach. Bach jotting down a little nothing for his 12-year-old son, Willem Friedemann. These are pieces that he wrote for his 12-year-old son, and I bet Bach wrote that in a half an hour. And we'll be looking at it for the next 12 centuries. You can't get to the bottom of it. No, there's no way you'll ever crack the code on a piece like that, So, isn't it weird? Plop down in some little village in Germany. So we'll get to Bach. But I just go back to the harpsichord so you can see that this can do something that, it's just way beyond the purview of the harp. It's just blazingly quick. You can change chords in a flash, and it begins to take over chamber music. Through the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, and on into the middle of the 18th century. So anyway, so that's it. This is a great big harpsichord from the Germany in the early part of the 18th century. This is one that we built, but it's modeled on early 18th century. And we know that Bach went to Berlin in 1719 and with a check from his boss and bought this model of instrument from a guy named Mietke, Michael Mietke. Built the original, and it's like a Cadillac. It's got all the 2 keyboards and all these bells and whistles, and it's a very fancy instrument. It weighs about 200 pounds, right? So a modern piano of the same length would weigh 800-900, something like that. But harpsichords weigh a lot less because of the very nature of how they make sound. So we just do a little physics review here. When I'm pushing a note down here, a tiny piece of a crow's feather, cut from the barrel of the feather, not the soft stuff, but the hard shaft, where all the lifting gets done in flight, okay? That's where, this is the engineer's part, okay? That tiny piece plucks the string, okay? And there's one for every key in there. Okay, so there's a lot of these, and I got to cut them all and adjust them, and it all comes from that same era in painting. It's all single hair brush stuff. It's that same mentality, right? And it's all very small things. They love that. So the harpsichord is plucking a string. When you pluck a wire, you can pluck a very thin wire and get a lovely sound. Okay, but the piano does not pluck it. Right, it's the bad boy. It hits, right, okay, right. The piano strikes the string. If you strike a harpsichord string with anything like a piano hammer, you'll get no sound because that heavy hammer sinks right into this very soft, low-tension string. They found this out the moment they invented the piano in the 18th century. So the first thing they did was increase the wire sizes to increase the tension on the wire so that the hammer of the piano can bounce off the string. It whacks off of the string. But that introduces an astronomical amount of tension into the piano's frame. Tens of thousands of pounds in a piano. In fact, if you knew how much pressure your piano was under, you would never have it in your living room. Because if it blows, it'll kill everybody, right? Right. But it's true. But a harpsichord is only under a few hundred pounds of tension because plucking the string is a very efficient way to get sound out of it, and it can be low tension like the guitar, right? So this is kind of guitar harp world, okay? So that's the basic idea. Just one more historical fact on that while people are coming in. There was another instrument that is the keyed version of the woodwind family. This is the keyed version of the plucked string family. What is that instrument that is the keyed version of the panpipe, and it was introduced in the Middle Ages? And we still, yeah, he's what? How does he know everything? He must be like, he knows, this guy knows everything, right? And he was here this afternoon. It's amazing. It's the organ. The organ is the keyed panpipe. Think about the panpipe, right? People have been playing on sets of pipes strapped together with leather for thousands of years. Somewhere in the Middle Ages, somebody said, you know, I could put some keys on that for you. You know, it's the guy with the pocket protector. You know, right? I mean, you know, I could put some keys on that for you, and you could play chords. You know, and it's like, but it had happened, and it became the organ, and we still have them because they're beautiful in churches. This is the equivalent of the organ for the plucked string family. Okay. So all sorts of things were gained by it. Some things were lost. You can't touch the strings anymore. And so anyway, just that's a little bit of musical history. Most of the time when people sat down, they played songs, they sang with it. The harpsichord, if it was a good instrument and quilled with good bird quills, could make these gorgeous old tunes like Greensleeves. You could hear how it was written, you know. So the emotion of the thin, you notice that the thin wire and the plucking and all of that, it actually finds almost a different sense of that melody. I mean, we all know the melody and all of that, but I think it helps you get a little closer to the intended character of the piece like that. And it has a wistfulness and a longing to it that is very, very touching. So I hope you can hear that. And that's what the harpsichord, it was people sang with it for centuries like that. They didn't play like the super hard stuff that I'm about to play for you all the time. You know, I mean, not unless they practiced all day, you know. I mean, and people, in the old paintings, you see people playing and singing. That's what they did, right? Before email, you know, I mean, that's what they did. Now it's like, oh, I got a text, you know. So anyway, things are different. So that is Greensleeves. This harpsichord has two keyboards. The upper keyboard, which I was just playing on for you, has a kind of more of an oboe type sound. If I play the same thing on the lower keyboard, it's a little more fluty. It's a subtle distinction, but it's flutes and oboes kind of feeling. I can also take the upper keyboard and push it away from me, and now both keyboards will play when I play the lower keyboard. So here's Greensleeves in a crowd scene. Yeah. So that's, every time I push my finger down, I'm getting two notes. Okay, I'm getting two unisons like that, which sounds way too kind of raw for a beautiful, intimate melody like that. So they assumed that you know what you were doing and you would pick the right kind of combinations. These are like organ stops. You can also do one other thing, if you want to be really romantic. Put the lute stop on. What's happening there is that there's a leather pad that goes up against the end of the string, and it mutes the sustain, so it doesn't have that vibrant sizzle anymore. It it kind of drops away. And that's imitating the old gut-strung lutes that people, you know, in the old days, if you wanted to date somebody, it behooved you to get yourself a lute, even a bad one, learn 3 chords, and sing a song, you know. And I mean, you know, you could not, music was the musician. There were no CDs, there's no iPods, there's no nothing. If you wanted some mood music, you better make it, or have the money to pay somebody to make it for you. So anyway, so that's the lute stuff that's going on there. So those are all my bells and whistles. A little bit about Bach to get going. The man who gets dropped into central Germany in 1685 and was, you know, with an IQ of 3 million or whatever it was. I mean, if they could calculate it, would have to be close to that, you know. And the biggest heart, you know, it's something about intelligence married to emotion and spirituality in Bach that we respond to. Because I bet you there have been other people that were that smart. A few of them, right? But Bach was not only that smart, he was a poet and a lover, right? And he was a driven, you know, a spiritual person, you know? And on top of all that, he was a worker. Because I think we've had other people that had many of those qualities, but they'd rather watch TV or something, you know? But Bach was a workaholic on top of all those other qualities like that. And that's what makes it, I think, particularly incredible, is that he gave of himself tirelessly, you know, and could not have slept more than 3 hours a night. I mean, you know, people have tried to calculate the number of hours it took. And he did this, and also when he was writing his cantatas in his most fertile period, he was writing 1 a week, he was reinventing himself every week. That is, each cantata was cut from a unique piece of musical marble. Like there was no automatic pilot for Bach. So, and no, this is what's really weird, is that he felt compelled to find a new way to do it every time. You know, that's just really making life difficult for yourself, you know. But maybe he was an infinite fount of creativity. So we're going to start with a piece that he wrote midlife. I think he was about 35 years old, and he started working on the Well-Tempered Clavier. Remember, Bach does not publish. Bach published 4 little volumes of keyboard music on his own dime in his lifetime. That's it. All the rest of it was not published. But he's writing this piece called the Well-Tempered Clavier. It's for his best students. It's kind of difficult to play, most of it. It's also his greatest keyboard music. And he may have been under house arrest when he started this. It's a little-known story. Bach was working at Weimar, and he took a new job at Curtin. He was going to move, and he didn't get a release from his old job, which is kind of like sort of like a criminal offense. And they put him under house arrest for a month. He couldn't go out, all this stuff. So he told the student later on, he began the Well-Tempered Clavier when he had a lot of time on his hands. Which I think for Bach could have been 10 minutes, but, you know, like, you know, waiting for a train, as it were. Anyway, so he starts the Well-Tempered Clavier, which is a huge cycle of keyboard pieces in different keys. He starts it in the home of all keys, which is C major. They had a lot of beliefs about C major in Bach's day that were not just, you know, fantasy, but they actually tuned their keyboard instruments so that C major sounded better than any other key. It was the center of their spiritual being. So he starts this Odyssey in C. And then if you listen to the C, that's C and E together. It's just this very balanced checkbook kind of feel to it, you know? So then, he starts with this gorgeous C major chord, rolled up to the 3rd of the chord, and then everything is repeated. Remember, this is a guy who didn't waste more than 10 minutes of his life, but he's going to repeat everything. So, there we go. prayer, but nevertheless, right? Because that's what it is. So I want to talk a bit about how somebody puts together a piece like this, because this is really probably the boldest piece in the world. First, if I were the editor and Bach sent me this piece, the first thing I would say was, you know, you said everything at the beginning of the measure. Do you need to say it twice? You know, I mean, I got stuff to do. I have things to do. So could you tighten it up a little bit? And maybe if Bach were like completely in a conciliatory mood, which I'm sure he was never, right? This is what the edited version would sound like, okay? So this is like the Cliff Notes version. Okay? Here we go. It's really pretty thin gruel, isn't it? I mean, now watch what happens if you put the repetition back in. I think you could measure somebody's blood pressure going down. I mean, it's like petting a dog, or it's just you feel better already. But so what? What does he know, right? Why is it so great with all those repetitions in there? You know, I think it's a little, to look at it another way. If you play it just once, it's kind of like morning. That's this morning. But if you play it twice, it's every morning. It's not just 2 mornings. It's an eternity machine. I'm just working with this from my emotional reaction to it. As soon as I hear it twice, I start thinking back over every good thing that ever happened to me, you know, and it's there's something in the repetition that gets you in touch with everything like that. And it gets you away from the mundane. It gets you away from, I got 3 minutes, you know, to get to this thing, you know, which, I mean, has to be done. But there are other times when you want to look at the photo album, yeah, you know, and he knows to start this huge cycle with that, you know, and that's pretty amazing. So the first thing he does is he creates this cell. Watch him close the cell right here. Now, we came back to what I think that's a musical version of why things are round. You know, it's like, I mean, Bach is showing you the DNA for why things close. I mean, why, you know, because you come back to the beginning, in a way. Now, once you have a unit, you have from there, you have to explore. You have a whole thing. So that's a reaching out. Notice that we're going down. I played this on the piano for 30 years. I never knew I was going down. Listen to this. Man, we're in a much different latitude now, right? Now this is, I think we have a bit of the Garden of Eden, because everything is good up to this day. There's been no one has lied, cheated, stolen, looked where they shouldn't be looking, any of that. It's all right. And now watch what comes in. It's like the first hint that something could go wrong. You know, it's like this thing could blow up, right? Now here's the second look at what could go wrong, and it's much darker. It's not only much darker, it's like you already did it. The first one is like, don't do it. And the second one is, you did it, and you know you did it, right? Isn't that funny? Right? Here's the first one. He's like the greatest film director ever. He shows you the temptation, and he shows you the aftermath. He doesn't show you the act. It's really... There it is. It's amazing. And you have to deal with it.
And then on you go. Beautiful G7 chord, right? Now this next chord is the Bach, I call it the Bach signature chord. It's in every piece. I think it's 98% of the pieces that he wrote, something like that. On the first page, it's the tonic home chord with a flat 7, and it's this one. Only the Beatles use this chord as my. Can you hear? It's the Beatles or the other guys who are into this chord, right? Isn't that weird? It's kind of the ultimate Lutheran chord, if I could say that, because it's home. Maybe not. You know, it's that you're home, but you got this thing pulling you out of the middle. Isn't it? Interesting. And I think it will get more Lutheran as we go. This is a great moment. This is the only place in this prelude where it's not a chord, but it's a little scalar thing. And it creates what I'd call the watery mirror effect. It's a mirror, but the image in it is waving. And it's so beautiful. And it's mystical, right? Now he's going to change gears. This is the real Lutheran part, because now the bass gets stuck. Watch the bass. This is now, it's just the sheer will of showing up to all the meetings. Okay? Here we go. Here we go. Once. Hear that? And if you stay with the program, you don't have to succeed. You just got to keep coming. Yep. If you stay with it, you get. That's the climax. And it's almost like a Buddhistic climax to it. All the truth is open to you, like that. And there's no bells and whistles and angel choirs and cannons and all of that stuff. There's none of that. It's just the truth. It's really, I don't know how he pulled this off. Now it's one thing to start a piece like this, but it's another to stop it, because this could go on for days, right? So watch. Here's how he gets out. Exit strategy. Goes to his Beatles chord, and then he changes the tone of voice. It's the same rhythm, but notice the figure is very gallant, Baroque. It's flowery. It's one of those signatures. I remain ever truly and faithfully yours. And it's all that stuff, right? And so then. I think it's kind of coming out of alpha. He's waking up. Back to where we came from, way up high. And the poet Goethe said that this prelude to him was the stillness in the breast of God before he created the world. You know. And I know and of course Bach probably would have said it's Wednesday. You know. But I mean that's the difference between the Roman. But nevertheless, so anyway, but you can hear it's so good, and it closes up on itself, and then creation, which is the fugue. Okay. And remember, Bach, they had 13 kids that lived out of their 20 that were born. So imagine in the morning, out of those rooms, here they come, and they're hungry. Here we go. Okay. that. That's in 4 independent parts that all copy each other, out of phase with each other. And then, so in the newspaper you have Sudoku, like level 1 star through, so was it 6? Or maybe 6 or 7 stars. So if you could go out to about 787 stars of difficulty, that's what it is to write a piece like that. I mean, even the wiring on the space shuttle is comparatively easy, right, compared to thinking that up. I'm not kidding. It's really that hard. It's tricky to play, but it's a million times harder to create it. And it's not that it's just so hard to work it out on paper, it's that the emotion has to follow. It's like he takes you somewhere. He's not just goofing with numbers, right? He's really telling you a story about life. Okay. So anyway, and notice that he starts with this little melody that's just like walking to church. And then the soprano, she says, "I hear you." Tenor's on time. Bass is a little late. They always are. I want to freeze frame it right here. Now listen to that Harry Potter moment. Listen. Now, I'm pointing it out because how did that get in here? And in this piece, if you freeze frame it at almost any moment, the material at hand is very confusing. You say, well, how did that character get into this book? And yet, when you hear it as a fluid pass, it all makes perfect sense like that. So what I'm trying to get at is how much variety, disparity, how much Tabasco sauce is really in a recipe like this that makes it work. Okay, and Bach makes it sound so smooth and fluid, but it's full of disjuncture, of quantum leaps, and all of that. And again, he's just a choir master in Germany, throwing this stuff out. A little bit about who he was. Has everybody read the Bach autobiography? Yeah, How I Did It in the Lutheran Church. Has nobody? Right. So, pretty great ones write autobiographies, right? But the really great ones don't write autobiographies. But Bach, we don't hardly know anything about his life because he didn't tell us anything. He just worked. He was a workaholic. Bach, and he's the 8th child of a family, a long line of musicians, professional and near professional. And he's if you're into this kind of thing, he's the baby of 8, which I think is really interesting. So he's the youngest, and when he's about 8 or 9 years old, his mother dies, his father remarries a few months later, and then he dies a couple of months into his second marriage. So Bach is an orphan at the age of 9. And he goes off to live with an older brother. He's a scholarship student. He does everything, but willy-nilly, just making one thing happen and then another. He's a great organist. Bach played things on the organ with his feet on the pedals that most people couldn't play with their hands. I don't know if you knew that. Yeah. He was like some kind of circus thing, So he anywhere he went, he could always have an organ job because he was so amazing. Like the Art Tatum. Do you remember? You older folks remember Art Tatum? Yeah, right. The Art Tatum of the organ. Anyway, and he begins one job after another in the Lutheran Church, starting at about 19 years old, and moving from one church to another. And he loves writing church music. And finally, in mid-career, he gets this job in Leipzig where he's asked, or at least it's okay for him to write a cantata every week. And so he builds these huge cycles of church cantatas based on the whole church calendar and all of that stuff. This is while the kids are coming out every 10 months. Yeah. So, just imagine the household, and the kids become the copyists. They're all, remember, there's no Kinko. This is pre-Kinkos. Yeah. Right. Even your computer printer didn't have a scanner in those days. So anyway, so the whole family, they're all copyists, and turning it out. So, and he was a very successful, very successful businessman. I mean, he made a good living doing this, and he was doing weddings, funerals, 6 services a week, all, the stuff that any church musician did, and he didn't publish except toward the end of his life he put together a few volumes of keyboard music like that. And his son, Carl Philip Emanuel, said, my father just was not interested in fame in the least. I think even as a great organist, he could have moved to Hamburg. You remember Bach stays in central Germany in the belly of the beast Lutheranism, because those are the people he could understand, I think. He could have gone to Hamburg and, smoked fancy cigarettes and gone to the opera and been the organist at the greatest churches in Germany because of his chops, right? But he didn't, I think, because he loved writing cantatas, So anyway, it's just a little bit biographical sketch about him. I'm going to go to the next one in here. This is kind of fun because you can catch Bach playing good cop, bad cop here. So, remember the way the first fugue ended? Because the happiest day, you let your balloon go and you go home and sleep wonderfully. And it's such a nice thing. When you turn the page to the next day and you come knocking and say, that was great yesterday, what are we going to do today? This is what's going on in the house. I mean, it's a deadline. So what happened to, remember in the first piece I kind of forgot to mention about the repeated chords? I forgot to mention, I mean, that's probably also a suggestion of grace. It's like what is free in life, you know? That's the part you don't have to earn, okay? And it's the repetition that allows you to feel that. It's a balm. It's soothing. In this C minor one, the bad day, it's the repetition that will kill you, right? If you take the repetition out of this, watch how academic it becomes. Ready? I mean, it loses all its potency, right? And here it is, the way he wrote it. And this is Bach, the mega athlete. It's like, feel the burn, people, right? And it's like, it hurts. I don't care if it hurts. Keep doing it, you know? And it's that sense of it has to be today. It's, again, deadline. It's the only, property taxes. It's due tonight, you know? So we all know that, right? Now, going back to the Garden of Eden, just because there's another angle you can do it. This is, I mean, you know, Bach was a very religious man. He knew the Bible inside and out. And we even have Bach's Bible. You know, it's in St. Louis. Did you know that? It turned up in a farmhouse in Michigan, and it went to the St. Louis Seminary. Yeah, and all of Bach's marginalia is. That's a great, I'll tell you after. It's a great story. Anyway, so if we do this as Garden of Eden, I mean, is that the most serpentine figure you'd ever, I mean, listen. Look at the way it moves. It's got this internal wriggle to it. Like, and of course, Bach, the good Lutheran, not one serpent, but two, right? It's kind of an old 1920s silent film with a lot of mascara. Now, look at, this is the fourth measure. Okay, just on its own. Again, I'll play it again. Doesn't it sound like it's coming from two different things? Here's Exhibit A. All I did was like move one little note here, one little note there. But the two things sound like they're coming from different parts of the soul. I mean, how does anybody do that? Okay? So. And like the first prelude, we are going down. We're dropping. Adam and Eve are looking at each other. And they're hungry. I love this right here. There's like a swoon. Go ahead, take a bite. This is so gothic, listen. I mean, it's like Bach the organist just shaking the stained glass with those pedals, right? And crunch time. And notice that chaos comes out of it, right? I mean, you can't put the piece back on. It's like, oh, I didn't mean to do it. It's done. You know that. Notice it just flutters. You can't contain it. They must look at each other. Right? It's like, oh, is this that tree? You know. I wonder what the penalty is. I can't remember. And here's your answer. Now again, freeze frame, this measure. I'll play it slow. Now I get up to speed. How unstable is this isotope? Listen. I mean, it's absolutely toxic. You know, in the 1950s, Charlie Parker and a whole bunch of great jazz musicians, right, were trying to do this, you know, with the assistance of heroin, no less. You know? And they never got it weirder than that. Right. There's like no drums, right? Except God, you know. And notice, isn't that funny that it's just so strange? What I think makes it even stranger, though, is that Bach is able to go out into the furthest reaches of you know, where the gravity is almost to give way, and yet you somehow know that he will always get you back, right? There's something, it's incredibly gritty, but you know that you're coming home. I have no idea how it's encoded in there, but you can feel that you're going to get back. He will not leave you at the bus stop in the desert to die. He will not do that. And here it is. There. It's like, wake up. Come on, let's get out of here. You know, like that. And it makes you turn the page and say, well, man, it was hard, but it wasn't so bad. You know, it's like, what happens to Adam and Eve now? It's like, well, eviction. I think this, I told you once, I told you twice. Come on, out you go. Everybody understands that this is a fugue. It's like row, row, row your boat. It's a round. The parts are imitating each other, and they're out of phase with each other, and it's just row, row, row your boat, but art with a capital A is all. That's, you know, but it's still that. Down here. Listen to how many Tabasco peppers are in this. That's right. And again. It even makes somebody like Ingmar Bergman look sentimental, you know? I mean, it's thornier beyond belief. Now, up to speed, it feels a little different, right? How many pieces by Bach that are in minor keys, gritty minor keys, and on major chords like that come from nowhere? Right. I mean, it seems to come from nowhere. Many years ago, I was asking this question to a group down in Lake Geneva, and I rhetorically asked this, and I did not know that there was a German woman sitting in the front row. And not only a German woman, but a German woman with a Marlene Dietrich kind of voice. And I asked this rhetorical question: why do all these pieces in dark minor keys end with this, you know, sudden major chord? And she said, well, that she didn't even move. She just said, "It's the truth." She said, "It's the truth. That's why." You know, it's like, it's the truth. Yeah, right. It's like the truth. I think she's right. You know, I never asked it again. Right? So. But isn't it amazing? It's like the truth comes pouring in at the very last moment. This is a big part of Lutheran theology too. I mean, a part of Protestant as well, is that the moment of correction, the moment of
of doing the right thing can come at any time. You just have to decide to do it, right? I mean, it's a AA if you want, you know, but and I think he can do that in music, and he does it with such conviction. We all say, yeah, I like that, you know, isn't it wild? But it really should be the worst piece ever, you know, I mean, but it's not, it's the best. It should have been, I mean, that's what's been set up, but it's, boom, you're saved, like that. So, and you know, Bach, I mean, that's all the heavyweight stuff. The next day, it's just the kids and the family getting 13 kids ready for church. So thank you. Thank you. Right. One last, because I just wanted to show you, you know, his poetry at the beginning, the Hellfire and Brimstone sermon of the C minor piece, and then this, which is getting 13 kids ready for church, or the county fair, or something like that. I mean, this is only his first 3 pieces in a set of 48 in which he never repeats himself. Right? There's no, it's in one, what I'm getting at is he's the greatest storyteller we ever had. Really, you know. So, just a little bit about this piece, because it's actually kind of funny in its fusion. In the right hand, you have a hot country fiddler, okay? I mean, this guy has been practicing since he was 5, and he can play, okay? Now look who's in the left hand. I mean, it's not the brightest bulb on the porch, okay? Right? So, and these 2 guys are gonna make a jam session together. So here, you know, that's just so hunky-dory, right? Okay? Now, when you put them together, I'd argue that you actually get neither. You get something that's different from both of them. Which is this. Isn't that weird? The show-off quality of the right hand is attenuated. It's pulled down. It's pulled in. And the guy in the left hand who seems so stupid now doesn't seem quite so stupid, right? Like that. Right. Now, how is that possible? Together, they make a pretty good team. Now, once they make their team, this is, you know, Bach, he's like he has to fuse everything, you know? He's like, everything has to relate, okay? So, once they make a team, watch what they're going to do. They're going to switch parts. Now the subject changes. It's no longer the county fair, it's... I mean, I don't know about you, but I can't not begin to think about eternity and something. Or you know, it just goes into some amazing area that's way, way out there, right? Where nobody has ever been before. And then... and that's even darker. And then we have a little kind of squirrels around the tree.
holding pattern. This is just straight hoedown, right? Back to the fair. So, thank you. Sorry to play every piece twice, but I think it helps. Bach is one of those composers that no matter how many times you play it, it never wears out. He has this something in his music that as soon as you get to the end of the piece, if you have any choice, you're just going to go right back to the beginning and do it again, right? I have no idea where it comes from, but it regenerates itself, and it's different every time you play it. That's what's really strange, is that. So it's a daily bred kind of construction is what he's after. This is an absolute opposition to his great contemporary Handel, who is a cathartic composer, who, like when you hear Messiah once a year, tears of joy and all this stuff. Well, try to listen to it the next day. You can't, right? You're done. There's no way you can have that experience except once a year like that, because it's a cleaning out. It's a letting go of a whole bunch of material. Bach is a builder. He's building you up as you go, and it's very different. Bach loved Handel. I mean, you have to have all types of composers, but I think this is work. It's his daily bread. It's the only word I can come up with for it. So any questions about this? Is all from the Well-Tempered Clavier. He wrote book 1 when he was 35. Then when he got into his mid to late 40s, being who he was, he thought, well, I can do it again. I'll do another set. Right? So he wrote book 2, all new pieces, all new things like that, because that's just what he did. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah.
So the crow feather, are you saying that you yourself maintain, and where does one harvest crow?
The crow feather, yeah. So when I need to fix notes and all that, I take this jack out of there. When I push the key down, this wooden stick rides up on the back of the key. The crow feather pokes through the jack, okay? And it plucks the string as the jack passes. I know you can't see. I mean, this is the jack that moves up and down on the back of the key. The string is within a few millimeters of the jack. The crow feather sticks through the jack and plucks the string on the way up, okay? On the way down, because it's actually not just inserted into the jack, it's inserted into a pivoting tongue. You can come see this at the end. We'll turn the lights up bright. But it's able to slide out of the way, fall under the string, and reload. It's spring-loaded. That's why you can trill on here. So I cut these feathers a lot. You learn how to cut them.
Do you have your own flock of crows?
Yeah, where do the crows come from? Okay, yeah. So 2 ways that I know to get them. One is to take a walk in the woods. If you take a walk in the woods and keep your head down, right, you'll avoid the deer hunters, and you'll see there are crow feathers on the floor of the woods. Yeah, they're actually in the city too. I mean, the crows love people, and they're all around, and so you can find. And it takes probably about 15 to 20 feathers to quill this whole instrument, something like that. Maybe.
How often are you maybe replacing them?
But you just fix them as they go. So a couple hours a week, I maybe change 6, 7, something like that. And it just depends. Some weeks they all hold. Other weeks.
From a feather, you might get how many?
From a good strong wing feather, you can get probably 10, 8. That's a great one. The worst ones you get 1 or none. So it all depends on how the crow's been living. Yeah. And the other way to get them is to go on the radio and say what I did. I was on the radio talking about this, and the phone rings at the radio station, and this guy says, "I hunt crows. I'll give you all the feathers you want." So now I get my unmarked brown bag, I guess which feathers sound better? The ones that fell off the crow onto the wet floor of the woods, or the ones that were blasted with a shotgun?
shotgun, right? So, well, it's just because they're all fresh, you know. So anyway, so that's it. So that's the Jag. Any other questions about the music or the instrument? Yeah.
How many man-hours did it take to create that instrument?
My friend Norman Shepard, we've been colleagues for 23 years. He made everything you see. Actually the Crow Hunter guy, as a woodworker as well. They made this, and it took him about a year to get it up and running, just like as a case. And then I do the stringing and all the quilling and the work on the action, which is closer to the player, and that way I can customize the sound I want, all that by choosing which strings, how to quill, and all that. And this instrument's about 4 years old now. I mean, it's been on its feet and making sounds for 4 years, but it's just an ongoing process. I would, if you're just starting from zero, about a year, to get something that was decent. But it didn't sound as nice when I first got it going yet.
How dramatic is the difference in Bach's early work to his late work?
Ah, gosh, yeah. He said, how dramatic is the difference? And of course, I've been playing pieces from mid-career for Bach. Bach wrote pieces, cantatas, organ pieces, and all that at the age of 20 or 21, which he never surpassed. He equaled them, but he never. There's a cantata he wrote when he was 20 or 21 called Christ Lay in the Bonds of Death, Christlag and Todesbanden. It's an Easter cantata, BWV, Bachwerk 4. I think it's it's one of my top 5 pieces of the entire Western canon. You just can't believe anybody wrote it at any age, But he wrote the B minor Mass later in life. He wrote this, and so maybe he wrote longer pieces as he got older. That's for sure, but not better, all right? I'm playing this week in Madison his last fugue, in which his own name appears, and in which his son said he died during the composition of it. So B-A-C-H in German is Bach's name. It's B is B flat in German. I don't know if people know that. So in German, the letter B means B flat. A is A, C is C, and H is B natural. So Bach's name is this. What a party, huh? You like that? And he wrote a fugue in the art of fugue. Some people think it's his last piece. He wrote a fugue on that, which is incomplete. It just leaves off. Here, I'll play you the very end of that fugue. You can tell that he didn't write this when he was 21. This is just, it almost sounds like it's from the 20th century, from our time, This is the last 2 pages of the Art of Fugue, in which Bach's name, his own name, actually suddenly appears in the middle of this very complicated piece. I'm going to start at the sudden point, okay? Otherwise, we'll be here a long time. Okay, okay. But you can, That's it. So that, I know, it's actually really spooky. Right. And when you hear it in this long fugue like that, and his own name pops in, and then it just trickles off into nothing like that. So Philip Emanuel, Bach's great composer's son, wrote in the manuscript of this piece, found in his father's desk, he said, the composer, my father, J.S. Bach, died at this point. Okay, so that's right. Scholars have since debated it, but I think it's true. I don't know. Because of the handwriting, I don't know. Scholars always, they think the handwriting is too neat. Bach's Bach went blind, and his handwriting, and he probably had a tremor, and his handwriting got really bad toward the end, so. And this handwriting is fairly neat. I don't know, that's the kind of thing scholars work on. I think it's the last thing he wrote. But anyway, so Bach died from complications of an eye operation and a stroke. It's actually the same operation that killed Handel. Same surgeon. Dude, I know. It's like, I think it was Handel's got the real surgeon, and Bach had like somebody who did the same type of surgery. Yeah, am I right? Scarlatti, stay away from that guy. Right? Yeah. So, can you hear? I mean, what I was playing there. I mean, that's the oak tree that has just grown in on itself. I mean, it is gnarled, and so it's very beautiful. You kind of have to get in the mood for it. It's very high density stuff. So why don't we just? I don't want. This is kind of a one. We're not doing an intermission, right?
No.
No. Okay. So let me just play a little Scarlatti, and we'll call it a night. All right. Good. Oh, Scarlatti. Oh, let's see. We could do after that Bach. Maybe we should do Happy. All right. Scarlatti in the key of E major.